In the later stages of Colin McRae's career, Colin began to feel a disconnect with the direction rally was evolving. The addition of driver assists like active differentials and anti-lag devices took away from the original rally experience in Colin's mind, and he decided to go back to his roots in regional British rallies, back to what he saw was the most authentic form of rally. As a consequence, Colin would embark on a journey that would see him build his very own dream car. A project solely focused on bringing rally back to its fundamentals, a car that would challenge drivers and exhilarate spectators. A car shrouded in mystery and speculation, and was touted to shake up racing, rallycross and rally alike. This is the story behind the McRae R4. The McRae R4 would come to life through another one of Colin's legendary cars, the infamous Ford Escort Mark II. In 2002, McRae would reach out to the team at DJM Motorsport to transform the Escort into a rally spec car. The DJM team would jump at this opportunity, receiving the donor car in early 2003, with Colin visiting their workshop in April of that year. While checking out the workshop, Colin would come across a car that spiked his interest, the DJM KA. This car started its life as a Ford KA, but the DJM team had modified the car to such an extent that it had to be registered anew. After discussing the Escort project, the group would get into conversations about contracts, with Colin slightly ranting about Citroën limiting the vehicles he could rally with outside of the WRC. Someone from DJM would counter by raising the topic of building a car from scratch under the McRae name, Colin's very own rally car, free of contractual issues and built in collaboration with Colin to his needs, marking the birth of the R4. And so, plans are set in motion, and over the course of a year, the first steps in design are made, with Colin McRae and David Plant leading the design. Taking big inspiration from his MG Metro, Colin wanted a light and nimble four-wheel drive car that would challenge the driver and reward them when truly driven to its limit. Driver assists like anti-lag and active differentials were either limited in nature or gone altogether. A modern interpretation of the Group B machine, with driver and co-driver safety being of utmost importance. But the most important aspect of the car needed to be the joy it should invoke for driver and spectator alike. The DJM team would start by finding an appropriately sized passenger cell before deciding on the power unit and internals. To save on manufacturing costs and time, the team would use the Ford KA as a passenger shell, incorporating the windscreen rake, size, and wheelbase from the KA. This would end up giving the project its dimensions, being around 4 meters in length with a 2.5 meter long wheelbase, along with a width equal to the WRC specs of the time. With these limitations in mind, sketches of proposed designs for the R4 started getting mocked up, while possible engines and transmissions were researched. As for the core components, the team would look at Colin's Escort Mark II for inspiration, first taking the engine, a Millington Diamond engine. Boasting a naturally aspirated inline-4 2.5 litre producing around 300 horsepower, this engine would rev north of 5,000 to 6,000 revs at full blast and provide a solid platform for the project. The car would also come in a track spec under the name DJM R2 for circuit and road use. This would use an alternative engine consisting of a twin-turbo V6 3.0 litre. When deciding which gearbox and transmission to use for the upcoming project, the team initially looked at outsourcing one, with the frontrunner being the same as Colin's Escort Mark II again. However, as the Escort took part in pre-testing for its first major outing, the Escort's gearbox would explode, leaving the team at DJM with a difficult choice for a gearbox replacement. With so many options to choose from, and not enough time or budget to find the best option for the R4, the team decided to take a risk and develop a new gearbox and transmission in-house for the already ambitious project. The outcome of this would be a 6-speed manual or semi-automatic gearbox coming in 4-wheel drive, with the option of transforming it into a 2-wheel drive for the DJM R2 or at the customer's request. To speed up development even further, the team would collaborate with Colin's partners at Codemasters to help design the bodywork of the car. Two ex-Codemasters designers, Tom Webster and Keith Burden, were tasked with turning the sketches and basic CAD models from DJM into a full-scale bodywork model by April 2005. The team would then go about creating the first model by hand, experimenting with small adjustments before creating molds for the larger production of each panel. This would ultimately turn into the project's first prototype. By the end of 2005, the brand new gearbox was proving to be a winner in McRae's Escort. The prototype transmission was being finalised and the full-size bodywork model was nearing completion, with the final adjustments of cockpit layout and ergonomics being made with Colin's feedback, before he dropped a bombshell announcement. The organisers at Goodwood had heard of the development of the R4 and were interested in having a static display of the car in 2006 Festival Speed. The team was excited to hear the news, but that excitement quickly turned to nerves as they would have to finish the prototype in a short 2 months. They ramped up their efforts and finished the bodywork molds a mere 2 weeks before the festival, allowing the panels only 6 days to cure. Once the panels were cured, the team rushed to paint and fit them all together, finishing their first prototype only 2 days before the festival. Making its debut at the Goodwood Festival of Speed would prove very beneficial for the team. Hundreds of fans would lay eyes on the project for the first time, with the McRae name bringing in an intense aura around the project. On top of the fans admiring the R4 for the first time, dozens of drivers across multiple disciplines of racing and rally would also visit the R4, with a few taking a keen interest in the project. After a first successful public appearance, it was finally time to test the thing, and in true McRae fashion, Colin had a plan. Colin had booked a small road trail, described as a rough gravel section, to shake down the R4. The few others at the secret test would later describe this trail as only passable by a motorbike, or a horse, or a tank. Colin was set on ensuring this vehicle could handle the absolute worst rally could ever send its way. On top of this, Colin would be comparing the R4's performance to that of his MG Metro 6R4 in back-to-back tests. This would be its benchmark, one of the largest inspirations behind the project. The test day finally arrived, and the weather decided to throw another curveball at the crew, as the crew would have to get all the equipment up to the trail through miserable rain. Even Colin, who would usually fly into test locations, had to drive in. Colin would set out in his Metro 6R4 to set the first benchmark. He would then take the cars out one after the other for testing on the trail, bringing both cars back more battered than the last. Upon his first return with a war-torn Metro, Colin would remark about just how tough the stage was just before taking the R4 out for its first spin. With Colin and the R4 gone, all the DJM crew could do was nervously wait, hoping for the prototype to return mostly whole, with their only solace being a distinguished hum of a Millington Diamond engine still running rampant in the distance. McRae stayed tight-lipped about the R4's performance throughout the test. The weather continued to get worse, and just after 2 sorties in each machine, the team had to stop and hope for the rain to clear. The crew headed over to Colin with some refreshments, eager to hear his thoughts on the car. When asked, Colin would respond with, "It was unbelievable," then proclaiming just how amazed he was for a first test. And regarding the comparison to the Metro, there was no comparison. The 4 years of development had been well worth it, and an ecstatic team, happy with the day's efforts, headed to the pub for some more refreshments and a full debrief. Colin then went about ramping up their PR game with a return to the Goodwood Festival of Speed in 2007, while the DJM team got to work finalising the prototype and started plans for a second model. This year's Goodwood Festival would be the public's first viewing of the R4 in action, with Colin behind the wheel. Sporting a brand new livery, the R4 would take part in the festival's opening, catching the awe of the crowd as Colin rips donuts in front of the Goodwood Manor. Colin would run the car throughout the weekend over the Goodwood Forest stage, posting some of the fastest times that year, only losing out to himself in a Subaru Impreza. When asked why he drove the R4 slower than the Impreza, Colin cheekily replied, "We don't want to upset too many people too quickly." Goodwood proved to be a key stepping stone for the project, with multiple people showing interest in owning an R4 once they hit production, drawing a vast amount of potential customers. Most notably, 2003 World Rally champion Petter Solberg was reportedly very keen on getting his hands on one. Unfortunately, despite all the promises of Goodwood, tragedy loomed in the distance, as Colin's final climb up the hill in his Subaru Impreza would be his last public outing. Following Colin's passing, on September 15, 2007, the R4 project would grind to a complete halt. despite the wishes of the family and fans for the project to be finished as the homage to the late Colin McRae. Without his connections, investment, and talent, the project would end there. With only one being produced, Colin's R4 now resides safely in the McRae family garage, only seen in public on rare occasions. Ultimately, we may never know the McRae R4's true potential as a competitive machine. All we can do is speculate on its performance and what possible impact it would have had on the sport. Some touted it as an impressive machine set to completely reshape the rally world. To the fans, it was a rare and mysterious car sampled throughout the Colin McRae Dirt franchise. To the lucky few who drove it, it was a truly authentic rally machine. But to Colin, it was a dream, turned to a reality. One that fulfilled every expectation, and another addition to the McRae legacy.